Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please put our hands together to appreciate I don't know. I'm not an international bilingual, but it seems like the grace to speak French is coming upon me, and I don't know how to say commentus de reservoirs. The right comment to make is perhaps reserved than quantifying it in less adjectives and superlatives. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Akanmu. I don't want to use adjectives or superlatives that will not put the delivery in proper context. That is why I just would say, let's appreciate him one more time by putting our hands together for him. Let's not be quick to let him off yet. When Pastor was introducing him, I remember I connected with Bank PHB over 2 decades back when they were running an advert. Someday, cars would run on water and cars will fly. In today's disruptive world, wireless cars are the talk of the town. Even today, we are being made to know that the fuel or the oil we hold so much in esteem will soon become maybe irrelevant because of the foresight and the thinking of people like Mr. Akanmu when they saw tomorrow, even while he was at Bank PHB. I checked recently, OPay by statistics has been adjudged as one of the 3 most valuable financial institutions in Nigeria. That tells you that people who have the foresight, who have the leadership, who have the insight, who have the conviction, when they step in, as you have stepped in today, your life will not remain the same. We have a second speaker who is going to give us insights also in leadership, but from a slightly different perspective. May I invite my pastor, Pastor Kola Oyeyemi, to please introduce him. Please put your hands together for him.
All right, thank you very much. How many people are blessed already? Jam those hands together for Jesus. I told you that you're going to get practical stuff. Now you have 22 lessons. It shouldn't become a book. It's patented, copyrighted. I'm going to introduce Dr. Mapaderum just now. And the reason why we're doing this back-to-back, sir, is because we've also seen one sad reality. There are a lot of people in corridors of power sometimes behave and you wonder whether something is wrong here. They are so disconnected from reality because they live in a bubble. Okay, so we're looking at mental health and leadership and seeing where the connection is or where the disconnection is. And so we have Dr. Akanmu. Fortunately or unfortunately, is out there in the UK, so he'll be talking to us virtually. But he's been tested, so very soon you see him come on live. He's been on standby since. But I'll just read his profile so we can understand him. He's a proven industry leader with vast experience in public health and health policy, and he has worked in the UK, Canada, and Australia. He's fondly called Dr. Maps, and is currently the operational manager for one of the national health services in England. He has a multicultural and cross-continental experience helping to set up a world-renowned forensic intensive care unit in Melbourne, Australia. Vast work experience as a mental health and addictions clinician in British Columbia, Canada. Dr. Maps has a PhD in mental health from Queen Margaret University, Edinburgh, and a master's degree in mental health and another master's degree in health research from University of Essex and Brighton, respectively. Also with a postgraduate degree in cognitive behavioral therapy from Buckinghamshire University, England. Dr. Maps obtained a Bachelor of Science degree from Lagos State University and a post degree in international relations from London, England. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a loaded personality when it comes to speaking about mental health. So we're not talking about a quack, we're talking about a renowned, respected individual. So join me right now as we welcome virtually Dr. Maps. Studio, are we ready? Are we connected? Please put your hands together. All right. Now, immediately after that session, you see the setup here. We're going to have a panel session where we'll put Mr. Akanmu here. And we have some set of questions that are going to be very probing. And then we'll also give you the opportunity to ask questions physically and virtually. Is that okay? So we can still hold Mr. Akanmu down. Boss man. Thank you. Please put your hands together for him again.
Hello. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Akanmu. Nice talking to everyone here today. I wish I were there physically, however, I'm not permitted to be there. So hopefully, you enjoy my slide, my presentation this afternoon. So today, we'll be talking on effective leadership requires good mental health status. And obviously, I want to thank Mr. Akanmu for a brilliant presentation. I think what you said, what I'm going to say now, we actually had up to what you said. So it's given us a brilliant presentation. So my perspective is how a good leadership will actually function with positive mental health status. So I will give you a synopsis of my presentation. And first of all, to provide you with an understanding that effective leadership requires sound mind and positive well-being. To change your mindset on the subject of mental health and mental illness, removing the stigma, to offer you basic understanding of mental health and mental illness, and to bring you to the awareness of God's purpose for you. And if you read Matthew 11:28, it's there. I actually have done a bit of studying on the life of King Saul and his suffering, a bit of archaeology of Jewish tradition and culture. In the Bible, King Saul suffered greatly from melancholy. In these days, they will call it manic depression. And the reason why I'm sharing this narrative is just for us to know that suffering from mental illness, it's okay, but not seeking for help is not okay. So people could have mental illness and it's okay. So, but there are help out there, but not seeking the help then becomes a problem. So a short story about Saul. He was a king of Israel for 42 years, according to the Bible, and he suffered a great deal from mental illness. However, at that period, it was documented as melancholy. Saul was very close with David, and he had a severe jealousy towards David. And I think that was part of his psychological state of mind because it was trouble psychologically. So when Israel went to war with the Philistines, they obviously lost the war. And Saul decided to take his own life. He committed suicide. He wanted one of his guides to actually kill him, but that declined. So he actually fell. He fell on his own sword, then he died. But what I want to say to you that is well documented. He made a kind of irrational decision as a leader to take his own life. And that was based on his capacity at that time. He had no capacity. He was a man under compulsion. And in Jewish language, they will call it as anus, which is you lack capacity to make decision. So if you go to Israel today, there is a saying called anus kishor, meaning as distress, as sore. So most people who have made decisions based on poor capacity in terms of taking their life, committing suicide, that's the term they use in Israel, anus kishor, as distress, as sore. However, there is a caveat to that. In the Jewish culture, there's something they call Talmud, which is the accumulated code of Jewish law. For him who takes his own life with full capacity of his action, no right to be observed. So if you actually due to the reason of mental health, if you take your life in Israel under anus, you will be given befitting right. You'll be buried just like any other person. But if you had capacity and you take your life based on shame, or which actually based on full capacity, you have that capacity to make that decision, then it's called bidata. So such people will not be buried in Israel. They have to be buried in somewhere, on Etai, but not within that community. So, and the reason why I'm bringing this is just for you to understand that mental health has been, backdated as far as 500 years ago, has been there. So we Christians, we often shy away when it comes to the topic of mental illness. We don't want to talk about it. We see it as a taboo or stigma. But I want to tell you today that all of us were predisposed to mental health, and we all have mental health. However, if we don't look after our mental health, then we'll be bordering on mental illness. So I will come to that later on, but this is just to give us a good example that Saul was a leader and he suffered from extreme mental illness, and that actually affected his decision-making process, which obviously he ended up taking his life. A definition of leadership, let me just move this so that, yeah. I think it kind of sums up Dr. Akonde's, Mr. Akonde, maybe I would say Professor Akonde, because your teaching was awesome. So I'm going to give you honorary professorship today. So any person who holds themselves accountable for finding the potential in people and processes, and who has the courage and guts to develop that potential. So that's a true leader. However, the challenge we have in our modern world is to find a true leader. Leadership has always been our problem. And I think contemporarily is a problem we have in this world, everywhere, Asia, Africa, and Europe. It's all about leadership. We all know what is happening in Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, something is going on with that leadership there. Definition of mental health, as I said earlier on, these are two different things. Mental health is different from mental illness. Everyone has mental health, and just like physical health, sometimes we feel a little under the weather, but not everyone will experience mental illness. So the definition of mental health refers to our emotional and psychological well-being. It is influenced by our life experiences, and this can impact the way we think, feel, and behave. On the other hand, definition of mental illness also called mental health disorder. I don't want to bore you with psychopathology of mental illness, but it refers to a wide range of mental health conditions, disorders that affect your mood, thinking, and behavior. Examples of mental illness include depression, anxiety disorders, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar, eating disorder, and addictive behaviors such as substance misuse. This can affect how we think and how we make our decisions. I have this diagram just to show you how we operate in our mind and brain. So if you look at the left side, so if you look at the left-hand side, it says it's actually a classical example of someone who is suffering from mental health. This person has mental health diagnosis. So, but however, there's a caveat to it. You may have a mental health diagnosis and you can function well. If you look at this person having a high sense of subjective well-being, despite suffering from mental health. So it means if you're taking your medication, you're seeing your psychologist, you're following the treatment regimen, you could actually function well. And I know a lot of CEOs, high-functioning executives who have got mental health disorders and they're functioning well. But if you do not look after yourself, then you go to the bottom. It's the lowest level of functioning where a person feels languishing and has significant mental illness. So if you're not doing the right thing, you're not following the treatment regimen in terms of your medication or seeing your psychologist, then you may be at the bottom. On the right-hand side, I will imagine every one of us, we're at the top there. At this state of functioning where a person experiences happiness with no mental illness. But if you don't look after yourself, you will actually find yourself here, the bottom of the right, subjective state of grief or unhappiness that the person experiences in the absence of any noticeable mental health disorder. So for example, we all have situational depression. If you lose a family member, you could actually be at the bottom, but it shouldn't take more than 2 weeks. Otherwise, it becomes a clinical depression. Then you could find yourself on the bottom of the left side. However, if you do not look after yourself well, even if you're here, that's why they say there's a fine line between mental illness, and mental health. So you could find yourself from here and you are the bottom of the left-hand side. And some people may not actually make it back to the right-hand side or to the top. They may be going between the top and the bottom on the left-hand side. So it is very paramount that we take care of our mental health. There's a very important and famous CEO, Beres Brown. It says, just move this. I encourage everyone to dedicate time daily to invest in your mental health and spend time understanding how you feel and why. Then you can use this to make a conscious decision to enable you to move forward. So as Mr. Akanmu was saying, as a leader, you need to make astute decision. But if you're not in the right mindset, your decision may be skewed and you may not be able to make the right decision. So it's very important to rest and to ensure that you reflect as much as you can. Window of sympathy. I would say, firstly, try to analyze but not criticize the negative things that happened the day before, whatever it may be. Secondly, try to channel your emotions by deciding on the one positive thing you'll do that day to help you fix the problem. So there is no need for rumination. Just move on and be positive. Finally, try to remind yourself to stick with the plan and that the lows in business are inevitable for you to achieve the highs. A tip to stay mentally healthy: you need to reframe your neutral thoughts, rid of negative thoughts, and try to develop positive thoughts. Do not say, I cannot do it. You should say, I'm able to do it. I can do it. So it's about reframing how your thought processes work. Be in the present and mindfulness. It's all about just facing the present. Look at the opportunities around you. Be focused. Forget about what was happening yesterday. Just try and be at peace with yourself. Get good sleep. Good sleep is very important. In order for you to reset your brain, you need to sleep well. Regardless of the qualities you have as a good leader, if you don't sleep well, you will not function well. So, and you will not be able to relate well with the people you're actually leading. So you tend to get snappy because you don't really have a good sleep. So good sleep is very important. Sleep hygiene is key to effective decision making. Connect with good crowd and people. Just like today, we are connecting with good crowd. The MC just told us today he's been able to make a contact with someone. So it's about having that connection, be in the right place, talk to the right people. Research on where you could find opportunities. Just keep things very positive in our life. Live a healthy life. Eat well, exercise, keep fit. It's very, very important for your mental health. You need to keep well, lose weight if you're obese. It's very important. And eat well as well. And just good sleep and all these things are quite important to enable you to function well as a leader. And do something good for yourself. Sometimes we get overwhelmed by helping others. We don't look after ourselves. It's just about other people. We need to lead people. Also, you need to treat yourself well. Go on holidays, go on shopping, look after yourself, take your family abroad or wherever you can go. Just do something good. You need to keep yourself happy as well as you're keeping others happy. And write a letter to future you. You need to be very, very positive about the future. You need to actually write a letter to say, look, in the next 1 year, this is what I want to be. As Mr. Conde was saying, it's all about vision. It's about this is what I want to be. Whatever I am today, I must tell you, I knew before I am. Even if I knew, because I always write to my future that this is what I want to achieve. And Hebrew 11:1 actually say that. It's all about faith. It's something that you've not seen, but it's there. So it's about having that faith that this I'm going to achieve. You need to believe in yourself, but also you need to plan for the future. You can't just write a letter to your future without working towards that objective. Pastoral care and well-being. Pastors and leaders are not immune to mental health or mental illness. Obviously, everyone has got mental health. However, mental illness, if we do not look after ourselves, we run the risk of having mental illness. And the burden of leading the church can lead to extensive fatigue. Hence, the lead on the pastor or their leader duty of care. And I think even, as I said earlier on, having mental health diagnosis does not make you less than anyone. It's about making that declaration to people around you. That oftentimes, when I'm tired, I could start making wrong decisions. So people can see that, when it's like this, we need to just support him. So it's about being supportive to your leader as well. I think it works both ways. It's not just about the leader leading you, it's about you also looking after the leader. So it works both ways. Fanatical messages bordering on heresy may be a red flag to the compensation in mental health. Oftentimes I've heard some pastors in South Africa asking their church members to do certain things because they will see God, which is not scriptural. They will ask people to start eating grass or do some certain things that is quite fetish. So I think if a pastor who was normally good and starts making such messages known to the led, then I think it's a red flag that we need to know something is going on there. Setting boundaries in our lives is the only way to ensure we stay healthy physically, mentally, and spiritually. Mark 4:35-40, Jesus himself set boundaries around this time. And that's one of my favorite stories when he was talking to the congregation. He was tired and he asked his disciples, they go on the boat, and it was written in the Bible that Jesus went straight to the ocean and he slept deeply. However, there was a turbulence on the sea, so the disciples had to wake up Jesus Christ. to calm the turbulence, which he did. But there was a bit of frustration because Jesus felt that, look, I needed my slave, and you guys have little faith. You could command the sea to be still, and it would be still. And so it just shows that the need for us to actually know when it's time to rest. Jesus could go on for years without having a rest, but he was trying to tell us, it was a message, he was trying to tell us that as human, we need our rest. There's a nexus between mental health and spirituality. When they came to the crowd, a man came up to Jesus, falling on his knees before him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he's a lunatic and is very ill, for he often falls into the fire and often into the water. I brought him to your disciples, and they could not cure him. That's Matthew 17:14. Although Jesus cured this young man. So what I'm trying to say is that at times there are some issues that obviously, if I have to say that to my colleagues, I think I'll be fine. But in psychiatry, spirituality is not yet an acceptable way of a causation of mental illness. However, we know, based on my faith in God, I know there are certain things that are actually not organic or non-organic mental illness. This is like this young man. So I think it's more of a spell. So obviously Jesus was able to cast that demon out of this young man, and he was ill. Scriptural fact and blessed assurance, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. 2 Timothy 17. I will stop here. That's the end of my slide. And I hope we have learned one or two things from this presentation. Thank you very much.
Distinguished audience, at this point, we don't want to let go the big masquerade. If you have an opportunity to climb the top of an Iroko tree, ensure that every value you have to take from it is exhausted before you come down, because you never can be sure of your ability to climb the top of the Iroko again. We have an Iroko in the house. You already listened to his delivery. We would be asking him questions at a close range and a far range. So you can take your papers and your pen. Don't let them be as complex as JAMB questions. Make them simple. If you can do A or B, objective, it will make it faster. Please put them together. But we also have some tested minds who have seen it in the corporate world. In no particular order, let me invite the coordinator of corporate meet, Sister BME. She's from the aviation industry. Please put your hands together for her. Make it louder for my coordinator. Thank you, ma. I'd like to invite my immediate pastor. He is a marketing communication strategist, Pastor Friday Okue. Put your hands together for him. Thank you, sir. And let me invite the biggest of the fishes, at least for now, Pastor Kola Oyeyemi. Put your hands together for him. The man at the center of conversation, the leadership brunch with Olu Akanmu. Please, let's put our hands together for our lead speaker, Mr. Olu Akanmu. Please, make it louder. Make it louder. I'm sure some questions were agitating our minds in the course of his presentation. Please, any of the persons you find putting on corporate meet, the color of what I'm putting on, please, you can pass your papers to them so that your question can be taken from here. At this point, I would hand over the microphone. Okay. Pastor Kola Oyeyemi, you would lead the question session. Thank you so much. Put your hands together for all of them, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the patience thus far, and thank you, my boss. Okay. Once a boss, always a boss. Okay. So we have quite a couple of questions here that I'm sure may be representative of the thoughts of people, but also we also want the people to ask. But I want to start from my end here, and you had alluded to something because of your presentation. Some people believe that leaders are born. Okay? Others believe that leaders are made. I just want to find out from you, where is the line between gene and learning? Yes.
Okay. Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Is the audio on the engineer side? Okay, good. It's a very interesting question. There must be, I think both will be correct. But leadership can be learned. I think there are some natural tendencies that may make you a leader. Things like communication. Maybe you have a tendency to do drama, for example. But leadership can be learned because learning is codified experience and codified learning. The world, maybe before we could say leaders are born. But in today's world, where there have been so many knowledge that are codified, there's no reason for anyone not to be a good leader based on all the knowledge that is there. And if you practice it, like anything, you will be a better leader day by day. I think that's what, so leaders are maybe born, but there are far many more leaders who could learn and be made even better leaders than those who are born. Those who are born, for example, who have tendencies, they may not have the right values, for example, and they end up may not even be the kind of leaders that we want.
That's quite instructive, because what I take away from that is that none of us has an excuse not to be a good leader, because it can be learned. Thank you very much. I think Pastor Friday will have a question for you.
All flesh shall see.
All flesh shall see, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed. And the glory again has been revealed today. So sorry, this is a phrase that is between two of us from 2004, way back. Incidentally, when he was my pastor's boss, I was there. What was I then?
We are your clients.
So I was working on the agency side and I was working on the brand. So every meeting was a learning session. So if you are wondering why I'm like this or sitting on this chair, it's because of these two men. So my reason for coming to Lagos was fulfilled, meeting two of them. And then recently we also had sub-encounter, and we are still on it, which is also learning. So you mentioned something while you were teaching, where people said a leader must lead from the front. Or some say you lead from the back or you are with them. But I also know that at different times you have practiced all of them. I remember we were shooting a commercial at Federal Palace Hotel, 2005. And then as the client, we said, okay, we'll eat our food at the crew. Just the caterer bring the food, we eat at the back. Then the client should eat in the hotel. So we made arrangement, and you came and said, no, I will eat where you guys eat. And I'm like, which kind of client is this? So basically, it's not that he was saying it, it's something he usually practiced. Now, what are the instances where a leader can actually lead from the front? What are the instances where a leader should lead either from the middle, like you mentioned earlier? And what are those instances where a leader should lead from behind?
I think what we discussed earlier about that that situation room during in the State House, the U.S. State House, during the Osama bin Laden incident, I think it says it all. It is to know the job of a leader is first and foremost to facilitate action, I believe, which means that it is not at all the time that you are to be in front. If there are discussions on finance or marketing, and you are not you have a better expert in the room. There are meetings where, as a CEO, you should go to, not because you are the CEO, you have to chair every meeting. There are meetings where you go to and you should sit on the corner and let someone else chair the meeting who has a better expertise to lead the meeting. Because if you do that, you are not likely to get a good decision out of the meeting. Then the other thing with the experts is that the moment you do not recognize the expertise, the specific expertise of people in your team, they won't give it. If, for example, you are a CEO of a business and there are financial decisions to be taken, there's a perspective of a big picture which you may have as a CEO. But if you now want to start taking finance decisions where there is a specific expertise, then what you end up getting, or maybe a factory engineering needs to be done, and you are not an engineer, just because you can interface with the engineering, you now assume that maybe you can even write the code. What will happen is that the people who can write the code will be frustrated. Then they will withdraw. Then you end up embarrassing the organization because the product that you create will be subpar. So the leader, you are not supposed to lead everything. Out of 10 things, maybe you are good in 3 or 4. Your bigger job is to lead a team of experts. And I think one thing we can learn from, Barack Obama, who is a good example of an inspiring leader, is how he was not insecure. He brought all sorts of expertise to work with him. So if there's a discussion about military, then let the generals take decisions. When you are not a military man, your job as a leader is this is our political objective as the country. Then let the people who need to run the war, but report back to you in terms of, is this war objective that you are running meeting our political objective? But when the president wants to descend into the war theater and become the general, that country, that army will lose the war because that's not his expertise. So it is knowing who you are and being secure to know when to step back for experts to lead. How about I answer the question? Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Pastor had a lot to say about Mr. Akanmu. That's senior pastor. Then Pastor Friday. I don't have any yet, but I'm sure that... don't worry, in a couple of... I'll acquaint myself with him. I need to learn 1 or 2 things from him too. So I'll have things to say about him. Maybe at corporate meetup 4.0 or 5.0. Okay, sir. Some people believe that the fear of the leader is a necessity to establish oneself as an effective leader. And in such circumstances as children that fear their parents, subordinates that fear their bosses, church pastors, maybe like Pastor Friday now and Pastor Kola, fearing the senior pastor, employees, fear their employers, etc. What's your view on this?
Interesting. I would think that is old leadership style. Leadership today is much more accessible, especially when you recognize that the leader is not a king. The old leader who was a king, who sits on the throne, and everyone sits far, the king is supposed to know everything, and they are to take instruction and to fear the king. When the distance is too wide and the leader is not accessible, he or she is likely to miss important perspectives. There are, just like we are discussing, there are many things you may not be able to see as a leader. You do not know what is happening on your factory floor. You do not know sometimes, maybe you go to the market, you see only 2 or 3, you visit Aba, you go to Port Harcourt, maybe you spend 2 days or 3, but the rest of the 27 days of the month, you are in Lagos. If your salespeople cannot tell you what is happening every day and do not have access to you, you will end up missing something very important. about what is happening in your business. So I think it comes from the old concept of the leader as a king. The old concept of the leader as a king is no longer valid in a world that is now more complex. And leaders should be more accessible. It does not imply that when a leader is accessible, they lose respect. There are many ways to command the respect of people without necessarily being fearful. There is no evidence, for example, that leaders who people have, in fact, if anything, when you look at a family today, the young children who are able to have conversations with their parents, with their dad, they are probably better able to understand a vision of the family. What's my dad's dream for me? Than when the dad comes back at 6 o'clock, all the children run to the room and they don't come out. Those children probably, if you use that example, will probably do some funny things because they have no relationship with their dad or their parents. So I think the concept of the king leader, who people are afraid of in a complex world today where you don't know everything, I don't think is valid. You can be accessible without losing your respect as a leader.
Sorry, Pastor, just a moment, please. For those who are joining us online and you have questions, please indicate by raising your hand online. The technical room would avail you the opportunity to take your questions for the online participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olu. I want to take us to a slightly different route right now because we're talking about leadership. I want us to talk also about the followers. Okay? And so my question is this. I want us to talk about leadership and tough decisions. Okay? Because from my little experience, some followers or subordinates or people who are led see tough or negative decisions as a sign of bad leadership. There's a wicked man, he's a wicked woman because you've taken tough decisions. How would you help followers recognize that there needs to be a balance between their expectations and the reality of leadership?
That's a very good question. Thank you. I think we'll go back to leadership and trust. If tough decisions need to be taken, are those decisions fair? And if they are fair, are they fair for everyone to see? Let's say we need to lay off. Let's say business needs to lay off people. What leaders need to do is communicate. This is the situation of the business. This is our cash flow. Our cash flow can only, at this cost, can only last us next 5 months. We need to take some radical decisions and lay off people. If that needs to happen, this is the objective and fair criteria for which we will take that decision. And we will have the empathy to recognize that we all did not plan this. How can we suit the pain? Some of the suiting the pain may not be money all the time. Maybe you can pay as much as you can. It may be simple empathy. Part of the things that leaders do, sometimes which are wrong, is that we are laying off people, that is it, and that is it. The simple heart of meeting the people that need to go and explaining and showing the empathy and the concern and showing things like, are there ways we can help? Can I be a reference for you because you've worked very hard here? I know what you can do, but we need to rationalize this job. You can use me as your reference. You can use your boss as your reference. When things like that happen, people see the empathy. So I think one of the things we did not talk about is this thing called emotional intelligence. Many leaders today lack the emotional intelligence to lead people. Yes, there is power, but how you connect to people. But we also forget, when those situations, the way we manage those tough situations is also the way in which the people who remain see that they will manage if things will happen. So I think it's about communication, the emotional intelligence, the empathy with the situation. And there are situations where something have been taken, but people see that it is fair, and they still say thank you to those kind of leaders. It is because of how that situation has been managed, in my view. Thank you very much. But let me say that one of the things in management, we call something situational, let me not use big, but it's what it is. We call it situational leadership or contingency leadership. There are some specific situations, there are contingencies that, yes, that's why I gave that example. But the value of the leader, the empathy, needs to come through, even in those tough situations. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Something I wanted to at least draw us into. In organization, there are people who are working, there are people we see as playing politics or being, having some favorites. So in terms of when it comes to diplomacy, in a place of work, so diplomacy has always been seen as a guile or something with an integrity issue. So sometime again, a leader needs to be diplomatic in handling some situation. So how do you balance, being diplomatic with also being transparent and, how do you balance being diplomatic with integrity and transparency? And such that it's not seen as basically playing politics in an environment or being doing something shady.
One of the things we discussed earlier is that leadership is wisdom. I like the example that Pastor Kola gave of Peter, who had to recognize that John was close to Jesus, and he recognized his influence and leveraged it. There will be politics. There is nothing that you can do as a leader. And politics means power and relationships. People will have different influences. Now, as a leader, I think what is first and foremost constant is, again, about yourself and your values. Why are you the leader? If truly the purpose of being the leader is to build the institution, or to build the business, or to build the community, the question will be, how do you align those people who have influences, what they call politics, to that vision, and ensure that they also see a stake in what needs to be built, even with their influence. So I think with application of wisdom, that can be managed. And doing that at the same time, ensuring that those who are also working, who are also creating, can see that they are also valued. Yeah, there are situations where you need to balance things properly, but it is what it is. There will be politics. Politicians need to be managed. But I think what is important is if there is a goal that everybody can see. Sometimes even the politicians will get embarrassed if they are not working for that goal. If you sit in a meeting, there are situations where you may be in a meeting with politicians who have influences, and let the organization, before you open your mouth as the leader, let the organization scold them. Because when in a meeting everybody is saying, this is what I contributed, this is what I moved, and you say, okay, so Department C, what about you? Even with they will be embarrassed somehow. So I think some wisdom is needed, and it can be managed. The important thing is let the goal be clear. And fairness is ultimately, at the end of the day, always very important in terms of the value. If the leader is not fair, out of trying to manage some of these things, even the good people may not end up giving their best. So it must be managed with wisdom.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. In a nutshell, let's say, what fundamental behaviors will you recommend for an aspiring leader?
Very good question. For all aspiring leaders, all leaders, especially our young people, the first thing is learning. The humility to learn, to know what you don't know. Find role models. And role models do not have to be people that you interact directly with. They are distant role models or people that you watch from a distance, what they do, what you learn from them. People assume that role models today are people that you need to go to see. No. There are role models that you just watch them from a distance and you are, in fact, learning more from them than people who are directly working with them. But learning, then the other thing that is very important to be a aspiring leader is this thing they call emotional intelligence. People, the skill of relating to people and managing them, understanding their emotions and drawing the best out of them, because the human being is an emotional being. You cannot relate to a human being. You cannot relate to a human being like a chair. So leaders who think all that I have is a chair and a table, I need to get results, you are not likely to. So there's that emotional intelligence is a skill that is missing in many young people. It can be learned. Many of these things are now written down. Is it Daniel Coleman? I think that's the famous book. Everybody should read it. Google emotional intelligence and begin to rate yourself whether you have the right emotional intelligence to lead people. I think starting from there, a young person with emotional intelligence and a good learning, that would be a good starting point in terms of managing people. The other one, of course, is your value. You cannot be a good leader if ultimately the value of leadership is about what you can get. Or it is the reason why if a team works hard, because it's all about him or her, when he or she is going to report the work, rather than say, we did this, that leader will say, I, if I appropriate the work of others. So a leader that has the value that we, the collective interest of the team, bigger than my own, will end up becoming more successful. So emotional intelligence, learning, and it's a good value system about the collective being bigger than self. I think are good foundations for young people to start building their leadership skills on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Can we please put our hands together for Mr. Akanmu and the panelists? Thank you so much, sir. We are not just done yet. There are a number of questions that were written with me here. I'll go through them, sir, so you take them. I don't know whether I should take them one after the other. I should read through them.
How many are they?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In fact, some of them have A1, A2, and B.
Maybe we can take two.
Okay, sir. All right. And I'm told that some also want to ask directly, but let me very quickly run through them. This one says, leaders need to deal with some challenges alone, like you said. And the question is, does this not make a leader shielding the team members from learning from his challenges? And the other one say, how do business owners grow through collaboration?
Yes, I said there are some fears that a leader must deal with alone. I didn't say all the fears. There are fears that need to be shared. There are challenges that need to be shared. But there are certain ones that only you, especially, I give the context, especially as a transformational leader, there are fears that only you need to deal with alone. The time when you go to a meeting with your troops and you all bang the table, you give power salute, and you get back to your room, and you kneel down and have to face the corner and pray for grace. If you are not dealing with those kind of situations, you are probably not pushing at the extreme. Because everyone cannot be committed to, like, I think the example of Peter was very useful. Peter wanted to, was courageous, but when at the critical moment, when they said, "Are you a disciple?" he said, "No, I'm not." So those situations will happen when you have to deal with those kind of things alone, especially in transformational leadership. At the best, you will have one or two people who are close to you, who may not even be in your organization, who you will have to express those fears to, for you to encourage yourself. If you are not dealing with those kind of things, you are probably not pushing at the boundaries. So on collaborations, of course, leaders must collaborate. You can't do a business today. That's the way to go. We have to collaborate to help each other. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. This one says, as leaders or as a leader, how do you deal with difficult team members? And he added, please give scenarios and approach to winning.
That sounds like MBA. Difficult team members must be, I think leaders will set the goals very clear. We communicate what are the goals. We communicate the expectations. What are the deliverables? We also make the sanctions clear. I mean, emotional intelligence does not mean anything goes. The sanctions also need to be clear as well as the reward. If those things are not being done, then there must be discipline. Because in a team, when there is no discipline, you can't perform. So I think part of the things are very early as a leader, when you are taking charge, let the boundaries also be very clear in terms of expectations. And difficult people sometimes will have to find their own way, as long as you are fair to them.
Okay, this one says, to what extent does a person's personal character play a role in leadership?
Fundamental. If we missed it, if we did not talk about it, my apologies. But in fact, we did talk about it. It was the discussion around the values, that it does not matter what incentives you give. If a leader has the wrong values, low integrity, whatever, people will copy that character. So the character of the leader and his values or our values is what everybody will mold. So it matters. It's actually fundamental. Integrity is fundamental to building trust and a good character as a leader. This thing they call Omoluabi is very important as a leader. I don't know where people got it from, but fundamental to being a leader. Why being firm and fair to people?
Okay, I think you answered this question in a way, but for the benefit of the person who sent this, the question says, how do you distinguish between leading from the front and continually what the subordinates are supposed to do? And the second part of it is it not better to air your inner fears with the team so that together you can solve them?
I think that's the answer. It's not all the challenges must be discussed, but there are certain type, depending on what they are, where that you need to keep sometimes to yourself. To lead from the front does not mean, I think it's been taken literally. A leader is sometimes like a war general. Depending on the level where you're operating. For example, if you're a platoon leader, maybe you are directly in front, carrying bayonet. But if you're a leader, like a war general, you actually sometimes with your binoculars, watching how the game of war is being played, if I can use that example. So you see the pattern of how the game is being played. So when we say lead from the front, it means you are soaked in yourself. But it does not mean directly that what the question is being asked, that you are in front and you cannot see. There are times when you need to pull back and have a helicopter view of how the whole game of your business is being played. So it's not to take it literally. But it does not mean that you are to do like David, who was sleeping and enjoying himself when the troops are fighting.
Okay, thank you, sir. This one looks very rhetorical in a way. He says, it is a clear fact that the greatest challenge or problem of mankind is that of leadership globally. With such teachings as that of Mr. Olu and other intellectuals, why is this a recurrent problem amidst humanity? So why is this problem of leadership a recurrent one? Can we solve it with 2023? Can we solve it in this room, sir?
It is because transformational change is hard. You need to pull people ahead. And there is a natural inertia of incumbency that is not good. What I mean is this. When things are going wrong, the things that are going wrong have a natural inertia. You do not need to work too hard. They will continue to go wrong. In fact, the things that are going wrong, what they are doing is just a maintenance. But to change it, it needs a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting. Then building a critical mass of people who will change things. Some people have said that you need at least, the first critical mass of change that a leader needs is about 30%. So 30% of society must recognize and move, not just talk, that things need to change. Then there's a passive 30 that will now follow. But moving from 0 to the 30 is a lot of work. And I think it's that natural inertia that things that go wrong have. That's why transformational leadership is very difficult. And the wrong things, they fight back. That will be why after Barack Obama, for example, people on the other side, in terms of race and so on, they fought back. So it's a perpetual push for transformational change. It's hard.
Okay, sir. I'll take the next question directly from me before I read the next one. 2023 is around the corner. It's about leadership. All of us seated here would perhaps think to one person or the other. As someone who is privy to the values of leadership, what critical things should we look out for in these characters to determine our choices in the next political dispensation?
For certain reasons, I will not. I'm wearing several caps.
Okay, sir.
But I think the important thing is let's look at values. The values of the people that are putting themselves across. And let's ensure that we truly understand their values. Because that's where things go wrong. People with wrong values, no matter what they say, will ultimately do the wrong things.
Thank you, sir. You talked about incentives aside from salary, mid or annual bonus. What should be the drive and parameters for other incentives?
So I said that transactional rewards have their situational usefulness. So there are surely times when we need to tell the business, if we can do a 50% increase, we'll take 10% of that for staff. Everybody will work hard. That's important. But what I was talking about was that there are bigger, there are bigger incentives than transactions. People assume that every human being is about money. And that's one of the things that young people, our youth are telling us. There are situations where young people, they are looking for companies that are doing things that are changing the world. They will stay in organizations where social impact is being made, where they can be proud, oh, I am an engineer. This is the coding, this is the platform that we built. So that's what I was talking about. You need those rewards, but it is connect people to a bigger ideal that is altruistic, bigger than themselves. Because the human being is not just about the economics of naira and kobo. People truly want to fulfill themselves. And that's what I was describing as transformational leadership, connecting work to a bigger ideal than salary. It does not mean we should be unfair to people in terms of what we pay them, but there could be something much bigger, a bigger ideal to change the world that we all need to work for.
Thank you so much, sir. These next set of questions are for Dr. Maps. Is he online? Okay, some members of the audience have one or two. Okay, we'll take one person from the audience, and there's one person who wants to make contribution. Then we take the questions for Dr. Maps. Okay, someone at the back, sir. Someone at the back.
Okay. All right.
Can we make it very simple and straight to
Yes.
point, sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the robust teaching so far. My questions goes for Dr. Ma. He talked about mental health for excel leaders. But what do you do in events where the leader, the doctor, needs a doctor? It's a very serious scenario where the top executive of a world-class company at the end of the day needs to be led, brings up weaknesses of the team across the continents, and does not see strength at all. What do you do in such instance? Thank you.
Okay, is Dr. Maps online to respond to that?
Yes,
All
online
right.
I can hear loud and clear. That's the question. I don't know about in Nigeria, but in the UK and Canada or in America, there is something they call mental health first aid. So every company in the UK and in the US, they have someone, a specialist, working with the team. So they could actually see the symptoms or the signs of the compensation in mental health from an individual. So these people are able to actually support that individual even before things get out of hand. But I think that question you're saying relate more to how things are done in Nigeria. I'm not sure if there's any capacity for mental health first aid. And this is one of the things I'm trying to bring to Nigeria, that we should be working with the corporate bodies to identify stressors among the CEOs, even the junior staff, so that we could support them as early as possible before things get out of hand.
Okay, thank you so much. There's another question here for Dr. Maps. This says, I'm constantly getting panic attacks due to pressure from the office, and there would always be pressure at work. How can I manage my mental health?
I think it's about everyone has got a threshold when it comes to how much we can take. And it's all boiled down to the human resources of every organization as well, to ensure that when they're taking on staff, their mental health status is actually known. So it's only when you know that someone has got some level of stressors or mental health issues that you'll be able to support them. So in the UK now, it's part of your HR process. You have to declare if there's any form of mental health issue. Say stress, anxiety, depression, or any form of mental health, no matter how little it is. So when you start having such symptoms of anxiety, you'll be signposted to the person that will support you, mostly the psychologist in the company or the therapist.
Okay, this question is similar to the one you just answered. The first part of it says, how can someone remain mentally stable when he or she is burnt out in an office on daily basis? And the second one says, how can someone lead effectively when your suggestions and complaints of your team members are not considered?
These are very good questions. Number one, as I said in my slide, you need to know when to stop. You need to know how to look after yourself. Self-care is very important. You need to have compassion for yourself. Oftentimes, you see people leaving work. First of all, they go to nearest pepper soup joint to have a good time or to have a beer, instead of going home early enough to have a good shower and have a good sleep. So sometimes you have to know how to manage yourself as well. And the other question, you need to understand the team dynamic. Some people are not really gifted when it comes to like giving articulate response to their staff or to their colleagues. So it's about managing your own psychology as well. I have no control of what other people are saying to me, but I have control of how I manage what they're saying to me. So it's about managing your own emotion as well. And it comes down to emotional intelligence, ability to be able to manage yourself, regardless of what people say. I know who I am. So whatever you're saying to me, I know that's not me. So it's about that having the ability to manage yourself. People will always say things to you within the team. There's always going to be team dynamic, but it's about understanding how it plays out.
All right, Dr. Maps, about 5 days ago, there was a report by the Economic Intelligence Group that Lagos, Nigeria, rates among the top 10 most stressful cities to live in 2021. It means that Lagos is stressed. From your experience or from your knowledge, please, how do you deal with a stress-centric city like Lagos?
I think I could only deal with that if I became the governor of Lagos State. That's huge. I think it's all about governance as well. It's about making, those little things we take for granted in this part of the world, in Europe. Good roads, stable electricity, water, and all those things. They're quite important. They reduce the level of stress you have. But when you have to come back from work, there's no light. You have to start looking for petrol to actually power your generator. So this is another level of stress. And to be candid, I would think Nigeria is the most stressed. Lagos is the most stressed city in the world. I would think we're number one.
Thank you so much. And this one says, how to come out of grief. How to come out of grief of the death of a loved one. How do I know I am depressed?
I think, as I said, situational depression is common. If you lose someone, or even if you lost a job, it's common phenomenon to be depressed, but that's what we call situational depression. But if it's over 2 weeks, then it's actually bordering on clinical depression, where you have to see a psychologist for support. However, there are 5 stages of depression. So you need to go through in denial, you need to go through, okay, I want to open up to someone, acceptance, and you need support from people, then you start all over again. So you would know when you lose someone who's like, that's the end of the world, oh, I don't think I can come out of it. But with time heals. You get back to your normal self, life will continue, you go on with your life. But when the situation is over 2 weeks, then it's actually bordering on your mental health. And for you to know, we all have predisposition to mental illness. It only takes something to trigger that. So that's why I said it's a fine line between mental health and mental illness. So we need to stay healthy.
Thank you. There is someone in the audience. She has a contribution. Okay, a question. All right, please.
Thank you very much. Doctor, my question is this. It has to do with my son. He's 14 years, going to 15. And we realized that he has social anxiety. And my question is, does social anxiety has to do with mental situation? Because sometimes he refuses to go to school. And when you ask him, he will say because he doesn't know how to talk with people, how to relate with people. And sometimes they don't understand him. So he feels shy in going to school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think I need to pick up that question with you privately. Have you had autism assessment? Because if the boy is not really comfortable having this conversation with people at school, it may actually be bordering on autism. And there are a lot of children in Nigeria, even adults, who've got that trait of autism. But because there's no constant assessment in Nigeria, people fail to understand what they're going through. So I could pick up that question with you. You got my number there, or Lisa could give it to you. We could talk more about that. So I'll be more than happy to have a chat with you on one-to-one.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Maps. We appreciate you. Very quickly, we would get back to Mr. Olu Akanmu. The question has been from the perspective of leadership. What about the followership? Pastor Kola, you would help us from that angle, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's been a very...
I think you're on mute.
Okay.
You're on mute, sir.
Can you hear me? Oh, I think
You're back on mute.
Technical side should fix that, please. Okay. All right. It's been a very incisive morning, bordering to the afternoon, and a lot of things have been pumped out to leaders. But I want, because in this room, I'm sure there are leaders, and there's reality that every leader is a follower. Okay, because you have somebody ahead of you, or somebody who's coming behind you, and so we find ourselves at some point in the middle. Okay, so I'm asking this question: how does a subordinate survive an insecure boss?
Wow. Wisdom. Wow. That's very real in many situations. It's the burden of being good, being brilliant. A brilliant subordinate must have the emotional intelligence to manage upwards, to make the boss feel secured. So there are meetings you must go to when you need to keep quiet, even when you know the answer, or when wisdom should tell you that I must not speak first, or I must not provide the answer, or perhaps the way to communicate, to act in this meeting is probably more to ask questions. You may know the answer, but there may be a nice way to frame it in ways in which everybody eventually gets to what you think the answer should be. I think when we are younger, you want to be in a meeting and show off how much you know. And as soon as the meeting starts, is A, B, C, D, and other people have not even processed the answer. So I think it shows a poor level of wisdom and a low emotional intelligence. I think with the two, you can manage an insecure boss. And it means that sometimes it won't be perfect. It means sometimes you will get home and feel, I wish this place we could do something much better. But patience also comes with maturity. That you know that, yes, it won't be perfect today, but with a little bit of massaging on the side, making the leader comfortable, maybe also suggestion, words like framing. I would like to suggest this different from I think this is what we should do. When you are young and you lack wisdom, You say, I have done the analysis, it is foolproof, I've run it by chi-square, I've proven it, this is the answer. But it's fine. Yes, you may win that, but no one will call you next time. You have embarrassed your boss. So it is to frame it well. I would like to suggest, and maybe sometimes you say things like, let me go and work on it, and I will get back to you. And maybe before the meeting, actually have a conversation with your boss. This is the analysis, and let the boss go and shine. Maybe. Give the analysis to the boss who is insecure. Eventually, everybody gets to know the backbone of the boss without your saying it. So that will be, and the other thing I think we're talking about followership. If you cannot be a good follower, you cannot be a good leader. There's a strong correlation between followership and leadership. Ever see people who cannot support their boss, who pull down their boss? Watch them. When they become leaders, they will mess it up. So also be a good follower, which includes supporting our bosses to look good. Eventually, everybody will know the role that you have played.
Thank you very much. I think you have one. Maybe you take something close to this about I think the 10th question there with you. Let's check.
Thank you, sir. This one you break my head another time. But this one I'm going to go a bit. We are in the time of change. And then when Pastor Kola was reading your CV, and first, I know you're a trained pharmacist. I'm surprised. Then from there, you have worked as a client service director in an advertising agency. And you've worked as head of marketing in a telco. You've been in banking. Now you are in fintech, and in all this area you excel. So now, getting personal, can you help us at least share some thought on your experience? What are the values that has driven you and helped you through these different industries and also help you excel while at it?
I think the first thing is there is grace. There is anything that there is no one who is wise. There is grace. But when I speak to young people, what I say to them are, before I forget, these questions I try to answer I have a podcast called Loose File Podcast, if you can find it on Apple or whatever. That is one of the podcasts that discuss continuous and adaptive learning for good career. I try to answer these questions there. You must continuously learn. And you must learn adaptively. Because life opportunities will not present themselves to you the way you expect. When I came out of pharmacy school, I didn't know. My thought, everybody that came will go to pharmacy school, what you want to become best is you end up with a manufacturing, a Glaxo, a Pfizer, and if you can become a director there or whatever, you think you've done well. But I started in Glaxo as a medical rep. But that was one of the early devaluations of the Naira. Naira moved from like 1 to 2 or 3 to 35. I remembered I was based in Benin City, traveling from Lagos to Benin. And the prices, the price list of Glaxo changed like 3 times. Because I was in precision medicines, but we were importing. So every price had to be indexed to the rate of the Naira. The prices changed 3 times between Lagos and Benin. And what that meant was that the pharmaceutical industry shrunk because prices went like 1,000%. Salaries have not increased. It means that the size of pharma industry in Nigeria shrunk. And many of the multinationals, like the Glaxos, and some of them had to merge or some of them had to leave. Then this one. Then you had all this experience, you have done some few years as a med rep. What do you do next? It means you got to adapt. And that was it. The opportunity that came then, so there's also something I discussed there about what is called expand your knowledge on the adjacent side, adjacent of knowledge. So you know one thing. Adapting to life opportunities means build adjacent knowledge. So for example, in my case, I started from pharmacy, but I was in sales, which you call medical rep. So I would go to our annual sales conferences, and I would see my bosses. They used to show, those days, they would show those things with acetate paper, those slides. And these guys, they look smarter, the guys in the head office. They look smarter. The guys who are telling us the indicator, those are called the propositions of this medicine, why we must sell this indicator to doctors. And they look smarter. And that was my first attraction to marketing. And therefore, marketing became a larger vocation that enabled me to cross from pharma to advertising to telecoms. So the thing is, what do you know today? How do you expand your knowledge on the adjacent side? What is the adjacent knowledge to your core knowledge? Then use that adjacent knowledge as a bridge, as a knowledge bridge to another territory. And when you do that, you find that you are expanding your knowledge. There's a common thread. So I started from pharmacy, from sales, on the sales side. Then I learned marketing. For marketing, I learned strategy. From strategy, I learned retail. And these are the things. Then you apply that to different contexts and situations. As far as you are open-minded, you can adapt. I think the problem is that, like the dinosaur died because it could not reinvent itself. So those questions, especially for young people who still have a lot of room to adapt, I answered in that podcast on that continuous learning for adaptive and good career. So I think we'll be finding it very useful. Share that with your younger mentees on it's Olu's Files podcast something. That's the title of the podcast. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. My next question, where and how does a subordinate draw the line between loyalty, morality, and personal convictions?
Morality.
And
With subordinate.
Yes.
Okay, being loyal to the boss. That's a very, very important question. The issue of ethics. And if your boss is stealing, does loyalty mean being loyal to a boss who is doing the wrong thing? Because there are a lot of leaders that says loyalty. You see, one of the things which you've asked a very big question. One of the things they don't teach in business school is this whole issue of ethics and morality. It's the reasons why, for example, investment banking during the times when derivatives and the financial system was crashing. Where is the moral value of bankers who sold a product to A? Then they also edged it with B and sold the same thing, knowing fully well that at least one of them will lose. And they will make money on both sides. Where is their ethics? Where is their moral value? I think ultimately, your values need to be your compass. It may come at a cost. And it will come at significant cost. And it has come, we all can testify. These values come at cost. If you have to live your ethics and your value. But you know one thing, if you have those ethics, people who have them, you will have a peace of mind that at the end of the day, I found my way out with wisdom because I couldn't stay here. Yes, I might have lost something, but my values, I feel at peace with myself. I would rather be where I am than have the world in a different way. You know the reason why Judas Iscariot had to commit suicide? For all that we might say of him, at the end of the day, he collected money, and he betrayed Jesus. But he couldn't live with the money. If Judas were to replay the circumstance, he probably would have preferred staying true to his values and never collected the money. Maybe he might not be as rich, but he will have peace of mind. There are people who don't have values. It's the next thing to steal. In fact, their bosses teach them to steal, and they also actually teach others to steal. In fact, they go to the boss and say, this is the next thing we need to do. But what time always show it catches up. I have seen people who do funny things very early in our career. They made money, but the money that they made also got them out. They thought they were doing very well. But looking back, you ask whether whatever at the time, was it worth it? Ultimately, I think things always come back. If you steal, somebody will go to steal from you at a point. So I think it's important living loyalty to the boss is great, but loyalty to a greater value is what is more important. If one needs to move on, if the boss represents a wrong value, one should pray for wisdom. And there is, when the church, there is a Psalm 24:1 says that the heart is the Lord and His fullness. It means that the grace of the Lord abounds. It does not imply that if you are in company A, that's the only place where you can be blessed. Therefore, with that sense of abundance of grace, you can decide to move on and you will be at peace. And the Lord will reward you for doing the right thing, I believe. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Please just hold it. We would, when she's done with her questions, we'll take. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.